Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No. Economic force.
The president is motivated by his desire to tap into this country's natural resources and critical minerals.
Critical minerals like germanium provide leverage in a tariff battle with President-elect Trump. They could become more prominent as trade tensions ratchet up.
These minerals, Mr. Trump would like to get them.
2 minutes ago, breaking news out of Washington. Donald Trump is raging as one of America's most critical supply lines slams shut. The president demanded rare earth metals to fuel U.S. technology and defense. Instead, Canada slammed the door, halting shipments that power everything from Detroit's auto plants to Silicon Valley's microchips. America is suddenly on the brink. For months, Donald Trump has promised to shield American workers with sweeping tariffs and bold trade threats. From steel in Pittsburgh to lumber in Detroit, his message was clear. America would never again depend on foreign suppliers. Earlier this summer, he doubled down, demanding that allies deliver the rare earth metals and copper he said were essential for U.S. jobs, national defense, and high-tech manufacturing. The White House portrayed these demands as a patriotic push to keep America first, but north of the border, Canada was quietly preparing a very different response, one that would hit the heart of American industry. Before we go further, hit that like button and subscribe. It's the simplest way to support the channel, and you'll want to see what's coming up next. Let's dive in. The standoff came to a head this week when Ottawa made its move. Canada announced it would halt the export of key minerals long relied on by the United States, a list that reads like the backbone of American industry. Rare earth elements used in fighter jets and smartphones. Copper that keeps the electrical grid humming from Texas to Ohio. Even high-grade coal shipments that feed steel mills in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Washington, once the guaranteed customer, was suddenly locked out. The decision blindsided mining towns and manufacturing hubs alike. In Detroit, auto suppliers learned that shipments of rare metals for batteries were frozen. In Phoenix and Albuquerque, defense contractors were warned of looming shortages in the alloys that keep weapons programs on schedule. And across the Midwest, copper orders crucial for new energy projects stalled overnight. For years, Trump had insisted America could pressure its neighbors into compliance. Instead, Canada flipped the script, seizing control of the very resources that fuel American technology, energy, and defense. The shockwaves are only beginning to roll through America's industrial heartland. The fallout is spreading fast. In Detroit, auto executives scrambled into emergency meetings as word came down that Canadian rare earth shipments were suspended. For an industry already bruised by inflation and supply chain chaos, this was the nightmare scenario. Batteries, semiconductors, catalytic converters, all depend on minerals now locked behind Canada's border. Factories that only weeks ago had been running at full tilt to meet surging electric vehicle demand are now warning of production slowdowns, even temporary shutdowns. For thousands of union workers in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, the threat of layoffs is no longer abstract. It is suddenly at the door. In Pittsburgh and the steel towns of western Pennsylvania, the story is no different. Canada's coal exports, critical for specialty steelmaking, are off the table. Mills that rely on steady imports to keep furnaces hot are facing the grim prospect of rationing. For every ton of steel delayed, construction projects from New York skyscrapers to Midwestern bridges are pushed back. Projects that fuel thousands of American paychecks. One industry analyst put it bluntly, without Canadian inputs, America's industrial base doesn't just slow down, it grinds to a halt. The pain reaches far beyond heavy industry. In Silicon Valley, chipmakers are staring at a dangerous shortage of the rare earths used in advanced processors, lasers, and sensors. These aren't optional components. They are the heartbeat of the devices Americans use every day, from smartphones to medical equipment. Executives in California quietly admit that without fresh supply, research timelines will collapse, and our production lines will have to scale back. For a sector that prides itself on speed and innovation, the prospect of standing idle is nothing short of devastating. In Texas and New Mexico, defense contractors are bracing for impact. Copper shipments, essential for wiring, guidance systems, and advanced munitions, are frozen. One official at a major aerospace facility outside Dallas warned that every delay in copper delivery is a delay in national security. The Pentagon has long flagged America's vulnerability to rare earth shortages, and now those warnings are reality. Fighter jet production schedules, satellite upgrades, even missile systems could slip. For a military accustomed to having unlimited access to the materials it needs, Canada's move represents a startling new dependency. The shockwaves ripple outward. In Iowa, farmers are told that the steel they need for equipment repairs may be delayed. In Chicago, logistics firms report that shipments tied to Canadian mines are canceled, forcing trucking companies to sit idle. In New York, Wall Street analysts warn that markets are underestimating the scale of the disruption. Across America, ordinary families will soon feel the pinch as everything from cars to electronics to home appliances grows more expensive. Prices rise, jobs teeter, and confidence slips. The emotional tone across America's industrial heartland is a mix of disbelief and anger. For years, Trump insisted that his tariffs and trade battles were building a stronger foundation. The message was that Washington would dictate terms, and allies like Canada would comply. Instead, Canada has delivered a stunning reminder. Control over critical minerals means control over America's future. This is not just an economic disruption, it is a crisis of confidence. For the steelworker in Pennsylvania, the auto mechanic in Michigan, the chip designer in California, the contractor in Texas, the assumption was always that America's vast industries were unshakable. Tonight, that assumption is broken. In West Virginia and Kentucky, where coal has long been a pillar of both identity and economy, the shock is even sharper. Miners who once believed American demand would guarantee their jobs are suddenly confronted with the reality that much of the coal fueling U.S. steelmaking was quietly coming from Canadian suppliers. Without it, production bottlenecks emerge, and the ripple effect threatens everything from construction steel to household appliances. One union leader in Charleston warned, "This isn't just about mines. This is about every American family that depends on affordable steel and steady work." Down south, in Houston and Dallas, the energy industry feels the squeeze. Copper and rare earth elements aren't just inputs for defense contracts, they are indispensable in the sprawling transition to renewable energy. Solar panels, wind turbines, electric grids all depend on the same minerals that Ottawa has now sealed off. For energy workers in Texas, the irony is painful. America may have oil, but without Canadian copper and rare earths, building the next generation of clean energy infrastructure becomes far more difficult. Projects stall, investments wobble, and thousands of American jobs in construction and energy services hang in the balance. In California's Bay Area, the impact turns personal. Semiconductor companies that design the world's most advanced chips are warning of imminent shortages in neodymium, praseodymium, and other rare earth elements critical to high-performance electronics. Every iPhone, every laptop, every medical imaging device runs on these materials, one analyst told CNBC. Without them, Silicon Valley goes dark. For a state that prides itself on leading the global tech race, Canada's decision feels like a direct strike at its innovation engine. Venture capital firms are already revising projections downward, while chip foundries prepare contingency plans to slow production. Even Wall Street, often insulated from supply chain disruptions, is jolted. Investors are recalculating the risks across entire sectors. Tech stocks slip, auto shares tumble, and construction companies issue profit warnings. Analysts at JP Morgan warn that a sustained cutoff could trim 0.5 percentage point from U.S. GDP growth in 2026. A staggering number tied not to war or pandemic, but to the quiet closing of a border for minerals. For millions of retirement savers and 401k holders, the shock is already reflected in shrinking account balances. The American consumer is next in line. From Detroit's car dealerships to Walmart shelves in Kansas City, shortages filter down into higher prices. Families already stretched by inflation are told to expect another surge in the cost of cars, electronics, and even home construction. Economists warn that housing prices may climb as the steel shortage drives up building costs, while electric vehicles, central to America's climate goals, could become out of reach for ordinary households. Historically, the United States has weathered trade disputes with resilience. But industry veterans say this crisis is different. One historian of American labor put it starkly, "In the 1970s, America worried about oil shocks. In the 1940s, we rationed rubber and steel. Today, the rare earth shock is our generation's rationing moment." The comparison resonates because, like oil and steel before it, rare earths and copper have become invisible lifelines, unseen by most, but indispensable to all. Politically, the backlash is building. Senators from mining states are demanding emergency hearings. Governors in the Midwest are pleading for federal relief. In towns across Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, local news broadcasts are filled with interviews of anxious workers and business owners. A steelworker in Gary, Indiana told reporters, "We were told tariffs would protect us. Now we're the ones paying the price." The irony cuts deep. Trump's rhetoric promised strength, leverage, and American independence. Instead, the picture emerging is one of sudden vulnerability, a superpower caught off guard by its closest neighbor. Canada, long cast in American politics as the quiet ally, has revealed just how much leverage it truly holds. For U.S. workers, the fallout is not theoretical. It is jobs lost, paychecks missed, and futures clouded with uncertainty. And yet, even as Washington scrambles, one reality is impossible to ignore. The United States cannot simply wish away its reliance on Canadian minerals. Whether in the blast furnaces of Pittsburgh, the research labs of Silicon Valley, or the assembly lines of Detroit, Canada's shadow looms large. Every halted shipment is a reminder that America's industrial machine is only as strong as the minerals that feed it, and right now, that feedstock has been cut off. The result is a mounting sense of unease. Across the country, from union halls to corporate boardrooms, the same question echoes. If America's lifeline for rare earths and copper can be severed overnight, what else can Canada, or any other trading partner, take away? The decision by Canada to halt mineral shipments is not just an economic action. It is a geopolitical signal. Rare earths, copper, and coal are the invisible lifelines of modern life, and Canada now controls a crucial share. For decades, the United States assumed those resources would flow freely south. By shutting the tap, Ottawa reminded Washington, and the world that access was never guaranteed. The move instantly reverberated abroad. In Europe, governments scrambled to secure deals with Canada. Germany dispatched trade officials within days, hoping to lock in copper for its energy transition. France pressed the EU to create joint procurement programs. In Asia, Japan and South Korea rushed to sign bilateral agreements, eager to secure supplies before American negotiators even landed in Ottawa. China, long the dominant force in rare earths, sees an opening. If Beijing and Ottawa align, even informally, the United States could face a generation of higher prices and restricted access. Analysts are already calling this the OPEC moment for high-tech industries. Just as oil shocks once redefined geopolitics, Canada's mineral cutoff signals that 21st century power will be measured in who controls the inputs for chips, batteries, and weapons. America's image as the guarantor of global supply chains has been shaken. If Washington cannot even secure minerals from its northern neighbor, allies and adversaries alike will question its ability to anchor stability worldwide. The market reaction has been swift. Prices for rare earths and copper surged on global exchanges, steel-grade coal jumped to decade highs, and automakers and chipmakers across the U.S. warned of production delays. Analysts note that tariffs can raise costs, but they cannot conjure missing supply. A car factory in Ohio cannot build vehicles without batteries. A chip plant in California cannot produce processors without neodymium. America's industrial engine depends on minerals it no longer controls. For rivals, the symbolism is irresistible. In Beijing, officials highlight U.S. vulnerability as proof that even superpowers are hostage to supply chains. Russian commentators call America a giant with feet of clay. And across the global south, governments see an opportunity to play suppliers against each other, extracting better deals from a weakened Washington. Perhaps most jarring is the psychological impact at home. Americans have long assumed Canada would never weaponize resources. That assumption has now been shattered. If it can happen at the northern border, it can happen anywhere. For U.S. policymakers, the lesson is stark. In the new era, minerals are as decisive as oil once was. And Canada, long seen as a quiet ally, has revealed itself as a resource power in its own right, leaving the United States, for the first time in memory, on the defensive. Canada's assertion of resource power does not unfold in isolation. It forces every alliance the United States has built over the past century to reconsider its foundations. NATO members who once counted on Washington's dominance now ask whether America itself can guarantee the mineral supplies that underpin defense production. Fighter jets, radar systems, and missile platforms all rely on the same rare earths that Canada is withholding. The uncomfortable truth is that without steady access, NATO's collective defense strategy wobbles. European governments, watching closely, see Ottawa as a supplier they must now court directly, even if it means bypassing Washington. In Asia, the ripple effects are even sharper. Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan are racing to sign contracts with Canadian producers. Their fear is not only price volatility, but the possibility that U.S. demands could crowd them out later. By locking in deals now, they insulate their economies against America's scramble for supply. For Washington, the optics are humiliating. Instead of rallying allies around shared access, the U.S. is left watching its closest partners secure lifelines while its own industries falter. China's role looms largest. For years, Beijing has wielded its near monopoly on rare earths as a geopolitical weapon. Now, with Canada stepping into the arena, the global market is effectively split between two dominant suppliers. Analysts warn that if China and Canada align, through coordinated pricing or parallel export restrictions, the US would face a dual chokehold unlike anything in its history. Even the possibility of such cooperation is enough to drive up futures prices, rattling American companies that depend on predictability. Inside the United States, strategists are quietly warning of long-term deindustrialization. If minerals cannot be secured at scale, companies may relocate to Canada, Europe, or Asia, wherever supply is reliable. An auto plant in Michigan cannot survive on uncertainty. A semiconductor lab in California cannot gamble on monthly shipments. Already, executives are scouting alternatives, and foreign governments are offering incentives to lure them away. The fear is not only temporary layoffs, but a permanent hollowing out of America's industrial base. This is why the geopolitical consequences cut so deep. America's ability to project power abroad has always rested on its economic strength at home. Aircraft carriers are built with steel, satellites rely on rare earths, and advanced weaponry depends on copper and specialized alloys. If these inputs are hostage to foreign suppliers, then US military and economic power are no longer independent. They are conditional, subject to the decisions of neighbors and rivals. For Canada, the calculus is pragmatic. By asserting control, Ottawa elevates itself from quiet partner to global player. It signals to Europe, Asia, and even China that it can be trusted as a supplier, or feared as a competitor. Every agreement signed with Japan or Germany, every shipment diverted from the US to Asia, reinforces the image of Canada as a gatekeeper of the modern economy. For a country long overshadowed by its southern neighbor, the psychological shift is profound. The deeper significance is that the resource wars of the 21st century have begun, not in distant deserts or contested seas, but on the longest undefended border in the world. Canada's decision demonstrates that in an era of high-tech dependency, the most decisive battlefields are not military at all, but geological and industrial. Whoever controls the minerals controls the machines. Whoever controls the machines controls the future. For Americans, the implications reach far beyond politics. They touch the daily lives of workers, consumers, and families. If copper wires are scarce, electricity costs rise. If rare earths vanish, smartphones grow more expensive. If steel inputs falter, homes and cars become unaffordable. In short, the security of the American household is now tied to decisions made in Ottawa, Beijing, and Brussels. It is a humbling moment for a nation accustomed to abundance. The United States, which once prided itself on self-sufficiency, is discovering that independence in the age of global minerals is an illusion. The choice now is stark: adapt, diversify, and invest in domestic alternatives, or watch as its industrial base erodes and its global influence shrinks. As historians note, superpowers rarely fall from a single blow. They decline through a series of shocks, each one eroding confidence until the world adjusts to a new balance. Canada's mineral cutoff may be one of those shocks. The question is whether America can absorb the lesson in time, or whether this moment will be remembered as the day the world discovered that US power had limits. What happens next is the question gripping Washington, Wall Street, and working families alike. Canada's cutoff has already rattled supply chains, but the longer-term stakes are even greater. Analysts warn that if Ottawa maintains its restrictions into next year, US industries may face structural decline. Auto plants could permanently downsize. Semiconductor firms may relocate overseas. Defense contractors may be forced to slow weapons programs, leaving the Pentagon scrambling for alternatives. Each scenario chips away at the image of America as the world's industrial engine. Prices will almost certainly rise. Copper futures are already at decade highs, and rare earth markets are spiking daily. Economists project that consumer electronics could cost 15–20% more by mid-2026 if shortages persist. Automobiles, already stretched by inflation, could climb thousands of dollars in sticker price. Housing, dependent on steel and wiring, may grow more expensive still. For the average American family, the impact will be felt not only in factories and defense plants, but at the dealership, the hardware store, and the checkout counter. Politically, the White House faces a dilemma. Retaliatory tariffs on Canadian goods would likely provoke even tighter restrictions. Emergency subsidies for US industries may buy time, but cannot replace missing supply. Some lawmakers are calling for a crash program to develop domestic rare earth mining, but experts caution that new mines take years to bring online and often face environmental opposition. In short, there is no quick fix. America is entering a period where scarcity, not abundance, defines policy. Globally, the future is even more uncertain. Canada now sits at the center of bidding wars between Europe, Asia, and the United States. If Ottawa leans toward Asia, where demand is strongest and prices highest, Washington could find itself permanently sidelined. If Canada diversifies exports to Europe, America may lose its privileged place in NATO supply chains. Each new contract signed abroad deepens the sense that America is being written out of the resource future. Some strategists warn of a cascading effect. If the US cannot guarantee access to minerals from Canada, allies may question what else it cannot guarantee. Trust in Washington's ability to anchor global order could erode. Already, whispers in European capitals suggest that American weakness in supply chains undermines its credibility in security commitments. For China, this is a strategic gift. Every ton of rare earths withheld from America strengthens Beijing's leverage in global markets. Still, there are paths forward. America retains the ability to innovate, adapt, and invest. Recycling programs for rare earths could be expanded. Partnerships with Australia, Chile, and African nations might offset some of Canada's supply. Domestic exploration, though slow, could gradually rebuild independence. But each option requires time, money, and political will, commodities often in short supply in Washington. The stakes, then, are nothing less than the shape of the American future. Will the United States adapt quickly enough to secure its industries, or will it cede ground to rivals abroad? Will Canada's gambit remain a temporary standoff, or will it mark the start of a new era where America must compete like any other customer for the lifeblood of technology and defense? One thing is certain, the old assumption of guaranteed abundance is gone. The United States now faces a test of resilience. If it fails, the next decade may be remembered not for technological triumphs, but for the moment America discovered its industrial limits. The United States now faces a moment of truth. Canada's decision to slam the door on rare earths and copper has shaken America's industries, rattled its allies, and raised questions about its future power. From Detroit's auto lines to Silicon Valley's labs, the consequences will be felt in every corner of the nation. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue bringing you in-depth reporting on the global shifts reshaping trade, technology, and security. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, because the next disruption to America's future may already be unfolding.